please mute our mic so that there won't be interruption, please. Thank you.
Okay. Just a few seconds. Okay. So, good afternoon, good morning, wherever we are. It's another Africa Data AI group with the meetup. We are always glad to be here. We are here to collaborate to explain more on the Azure Data platform. The platform is actually increasing, and actually Azure is actually gaining more ground, and especially in Africa, a lot of companies, I'm very sure, migrating on one database, one data, using one Azure services or the other. And as we know, what actually connects most of these things is the data. Whatever system you are using, whatever application you are using, there's actually data behind the scene. And Azure provides a lot of services. So, and that is what we do regularly. Yeah? Okay, so a little bit background about myself. As introduced earlier, Mitobika has been I'm actually a solution developer both on Power BI and Azure Data Platform. That's my major expertise. Majorly of Microsoft products, a couple of certifications. And location right now is Lagos, Nigeria. And you can actually connect to me on LinkedIn via this link. You can request for this later. Okay. So our webinar series is actually on Azure Data Fundamentals, and it starts from this class upwards. And our main goal for this series is to equip beginners, whether technical or non-technical, about Azure Data Fundamentals. So, as we all know that the foundation is very, very important in whatever we do. So, we are going to start from the basic, and we are going to take it bit by bit, and I'm very sure it's going to be an enjoyable one. So I'm going to take the module one, data concept, and subsequently, subsequent speaker is going to make justice to it. So our agenda for today is actually basic to explore the core data concept, explore roles and responsibility. The world of data is actually very important. I remember I did the exam, CP900 exam, which is Azure Data Fundamentals, I think around early November last year. And it was very wonderful. And it's an exam that actually does not require any lab, but it's good for you to go through maybe a single project through a sandbox, through using Microsoft Lens. I know by the time during the webinar series, a lot of speakers coming in will take us to one by one. And also, it's good to understand the concept of what we'll be taking today is the concept of relational data, concept of non-relational data, concept of data analysis, how much we can go about it. So, our main lesson is all data concepts. So, we're going to do a webinar series, lesson by lesson, and at the end of the day, what we are after is to be able to equip participants, whether technical or not technical, to be able to write the exam and come out with a flying color. Okay? If someone is at the lobby, I think we have a lot of people at the lobby, Mr. Ashley. A lot of notifications. Okay. Okay, so we have just so I'm gonna go through a lesson, like a teaching method, lesson because we are assume that we have non-technical and technical experts here and then speakers here. So I'll identify first objective here. The topic is core data workload, and these are the main things in that perspective when it regards to the exam. Identify how data is defined as core. Identify characteristics of relational and non-relational data. Describe and differentiate data workload, and describe and differentiate patterns in data. So these are things I will roam about, particularly in this session. these four things is something that we must be able to cover at the end of this session. So the first thing is the main word. What is data? What is data? As you know, you might feel it, oh, what kind of definition is this? We are assuming we are both technical and non-technical. Data is a collection of facts, number, description of whatever it is. Whatever thing it is, must be a fact, it must be something descriptive, and can either come in three forms as at today. Can either come in a structure, semi-structure, and unstructured. Now, technically, when there's a lot of people in the lobby, I'm using two shares since I can actually let's endeavor to admit a lot of our colleagues. I think everybody should be able to admit. Okay, so structured, um, structured data. I have a lot of bits of questions around this place. When people talk about structured data, oh, is it a data that we can put in one form or the other? The structured data is actually a data that can fit a schema. It can actually fit a schema that we can store it in a database table with rows and columns. Not all data can be stored in a database table. Now, for example, you can see at my left hand side here, there is a table. The first one, this is a table structure. A table structure is a grid-like form. A table structure is a grid-like form, and it has rows and columns. When we talk about can you hear me?
Yes, we are, but if you could also increase your volume a bit, it would be
You
helpful.
can increase your volume a bit. We can hear you, but
Okay. So a structured data is actually a data that can fit into a database table. Either rows, and when we talk about table, technically it's something that have rows and columns. So technically, every data that we can store in a database table is actually a structured data. Whatever content is it, we regard it as structured data. Now, actually, there's also there's also something behind big data. When people talk about big data, I've actually used a lot of people when say a big data is any data that cannot be processed with Excel. No. When we talk about big data, we're actually talking about data that have structure to the extent that they cannot actually fit into a database. So there are two things here. When we have a structured data, we have a data that can be fit into a table, a database table. When we have big data, we are talking about 3V, 4V, or let's put it 3V, the volume, the velocity, and the veracity of the data. So the first things we need to know in this pipeline, in this data fundamental, is structured data are any data that can fit into a schema. You define a schema at the beginning that, name of participant, time of joining time of the meeting, exit time of the meeting, occupation of the participant. We have defined a schema from the beginning. And when data are coming in, those data can fit into that schema. So, for example, schema I've designed is the name of the participant, the join time of the meeting, the exit time of the meeting, and the occupation. Now, when we now have something that was not defined at the beginning of the schema, then it becomes unstructured. So it moves us to So the second part of data called semi-structured data. A semi-structured data are data that does not fit neatly into a table or row or column. Instead, they can use a key pairs value or a tag. For example, we have when things are actually expanding, we start with the XML or XML data format, and then a better one we have now is a JSON format, which actually a good one. So a JSON format, a data that we can actually store in a JSON format is actually like a semi-structured data. For example, when we start with the schema we define from the beginning, when we now have a particular participant that has other information like the roles and location, but we have actually not defined location in our schema. What we defined at the beginning was name of participant, join time of participant, exit time and occupation. We now have a new participant, bringing up the numbers of family. Let us make it something, the numbers of family of years of experience. That years of experience and years of experience joining the first schema will not be able to fit into the tabular form we have provided at the beginning. So it can actually deviate the data to more of a semi-structured data, or we are going back to redefine our schema, which sometimes is not as easy as it is when it has been defined at the beginning. So a semi-structured data use more of like a key pair. One is for name in a customer ID. Name is first, last name is DDD, address and so. So people might not include their address, it is accepted. So when we have a key pair, it's like a key pair method. It's actually more of a semi-structured data. An example of those kind of data is JSON, Parquet, a lot of data, a lot of Cassandra, and a lot of them. So the first part is the unstructured data. When we talk about unstructured data, it's actually data that has no shape at all. It has no shape at all. They can either be, it can either be music, it can either be picture, maybe you are taking a picture of a flower. These are things that come in form of binary. The way they are stored, and even at the highest level, are in form of binary. So these are unstructured data that you can actually not really confine into a table. Though we can process it more better, change for picture to binary format to bit 64. We do that a lot. But at the end of the day, they are not as structured as it is, because you processing a picture, it gives a lot of shape, and it's beyond the two-dimensional processing. It's more of a three-dimensional processing. So data, music, picture, video are more of three-dimensional processing, and they actually are unstructured data. So at this slide, we have actually, and in the course of the exam, taking the exam, these three perspectives of data is something participants or attendees to be able to differentiate a lot. I think I have some simple questions to ask later. So the next thing is the transactional and analytic data store. We have the way we store data in an enterprise is actually divided in a big enterprise as a data pipeline or a lot of applications on it can actually be defined into the OLTP layer and the OLAP layer. Now, a lot of us engage with applications. We engage with applications, we either use the point of sale service, we either use CRM, we either use one application, one portal, one custom maybe, or whatever things we do. Now, data is stored one transaction at a time. For example, the last person that logged in into our webinar series, there's a data that has been stored about that person. So let's say it was Emmanuel Ewa and logged in. The time has been captured. That data have been stored. The same thing I have on my slide. Customer ID order for a particular product. That data has been stored at that particular time. Now, it goes on and on. It expands as more entries, like a transaction, like for example, an example of buying something in a mall. Once the attendant or the salesperson register you, your entries comes into the application, to the database. Another customer also, the entries comes in. So if data is stored one transaction at a time. Now, when doing this is actually the OLTP layer, the online transactional processing layer. Now, for we that were interested in doing some research work, some aggregation, some summation, or whatever processing we are interested to do in our data, we prefer making use of the OLAP structure, which is an aggregation store. Data is periodically loaded because maybe it's at the end of the business day, we move the data to this page, to the queue, or to wherever the next layer of database or whatever means we are prepared for. Because at the beginning, the business, the salesperson is actually making use of an application that is connecting the database. And imagine you at the same time writing a query to retrieve data from that same database the business are using. I can bet you at the end of the day, it's actually slow down. It's either it slow down the business that is actually making money, and it also slow you down that you as an analyst that is actually making insight from the data the business is making money from. So we have actually two layers, which is the OLAP and the OLTP. The OLAP is actually for the transaction coming in one by one at a time. The OLAP, sorry, I beg my pardon. The OLTP is the transaction coming in one at a time. The OLAP is the one periodically loaded. Sometimes I have some data, I have some volume of data. I even have a particular project that we're having a lot of issues around aggregating some data, because the data is actually, we have more than 1 million transactions in a day. We need to combine into an aggregated store to bring it once, maybe after the end of the day, and store it somewhere else. So someone else doing analysis connecting to it, it can connect to where it is stored in the second layer. So participants going for this exam, especially the GP 900, must be aware of these two layers of data store. The OLTP, which is typically a live system, updates are made transactional. Every time order is claimed, data is going in there. But the OLAP is more of an aggregated system, which actually occurs at different levels, following you to drill down or up for summary for whatever it is. Because the OLAP data is updated periodically, maybe after the end of the day, or once in a month, or once in a quarter, or once in a year, depending on your methodology or kind of data that comes in. So OLTP is good for small updates that happen frequently, but OLAP is actually good for large summarized queries. When you have a lot of queries to load, you need to be aware that the best way is the OLAP. So I think I have covered this slide, and I'll move to the next one. Okay, hope you can see my new slide now. Okay, so talk more about the transactional workload. It actually boils down that everybody dealing with data to actually understand the rule of API and some atomicity, consistency, isolation, and durability. This is how a database or transactions are coming into a database that actually process behind it. It works for every database. Transactional data is information that tracks interaction related to organization. So the first thing that we must consider a transaction complete. That we must consider a transaction complete. The first thing is each transaction is treated as a single unit. I have a scenario of organization using ERP. We make use of reverse cases. Maybe a transaction was reversed and stuff like that, or is incomplete. We have issues of open payroll, closed payroll. So something open ticket, closed ticket. The ticket is still open. What is actually saying there is that it has not been considered as a complete entity. So that transaction is not being considered as a single unit. Maybe it's still waiting for some other sub-units to complete, whether which process completely or fails completely. So when it comes to breaking down the transactional data, there are four major terminologies, and it's actually called the active test. When I know database administrator and database developer that works on database, these are what they actually use to test what have been whatever system feeding the database data. The active test. Does each transaction is treated as a single unit which success completely or fail completely. So sometimes when we have an open payroll before we are in the middle of the month and the payroll is closed, when the payroll is closed, does it mean that everything in the payroll moves to the database? That is the question. So that is what is actually, you must treat each transaction as a single unit. The second terminology related to this part is the consistency. Transaction can only take data and replace from one value state to another. I can use the example of a shopping mall system where we are trying to track the breakdown, the conversion ratio of customer from the beginning of advertisement to the cashing out of product. So we engage in an advertisement campaign, and the first stage is we want to know the number of customers that sign up for our product at the stage of advertisement. That is a particular phase. When we launch advertisement, how many customers actually click on the product? That is another phase. So consistency, building consistency for each phase is something that is very key to transactional database, because when it comes to transactional database, we are actually following a defined schema which should not be violated. Any violation from this schema actually make the data not really reliable anymore. So the issue of consistency is something we can learn. What it actually means in one language, transaction can only take the data from one value state to another. The next one is the isolation. Concurrent execution of transaction with the database in the same state. So you can actually isolate a particular row, a particular entity from each other. It's not a matter of when I take this transaction, a particular customer transaction, it starts with another particular customer transaction. There should be a way that we can isolate them. So, and the durability is once the transaction has been committed, it remains committed. Except, I know when it comes to DDL, database definition language, is actually referred to the admin, except the admin wants to go and erase a lot of data at the end of the day. So, these four aspects of transactional workload are something participants should be aware of. The atomicity is actually active. Atomicity, consistency, isolation, and durability. It starts from the diagram here. Start from the diagram here. You can see like a POS system. It moves, and then it can catch up. So let me move to the next slide. Analytical workload. So I've explained, we are actually coming from the data store perspective. We understand the OLTP and the transactional workload. And then we're coming down to the analytical workload. We know that the business are not the one dealing with this part. This is the part the analysts are actually dealing with. The analytical workload are used for this analysis and decision. So three important things is summarize one, summary, trend, and business information. What we need to define, we are interested to get the number of customers that patronize this particular store in a day. Number of customers that patronize it in a day is different from the transactions of entries of record of sales in the day. The transactions, each transaction are recorded in the OLTP. So we can make a summary of a particular customer can actually come twice or more than 10 times, as the case might be. We can actually, but the customer is only one customer, is not two. So we can make a summary of appearance of each customer. These are summaries. We can move from that summary to trend. What is the difference between today and yesterday? And when it comes to business information, it's actually key. Only system that stores vast volume of historical data, business metrics. So we sometimes actually have some business information like monthly sales, report of monthly sales. These are the business information. These are things that the business needs. And when we are dealing with the analytical workload, we work, as I actually said in the data was only making of what is needed, what is required. We work in line with the business information. The way I will aggregate the data for yearly sales might be different from weekly sales. Especially weekly sales is a very critical one that it entails special consideration because your week can actually start on Monday or Sunday. So it's not just a direct query. It's not just writing one query, it is by week by week. Some people might say our weekly sales is from our weekly calendar is from Wednesday to Thursday. We start a new week on every Thursday. So this business information actually makes you to know these are the three key things that is important in analytical workload. Okay, so we have actually dived from the beginning. We started with data. We started with the three main structure of data, which is the structured data, the unstructured data, and the unstructured data. We know if Facebook video, by now we know Facebook video is an unstructured data. We know a data that can actually be like a key paired value. Like, for example, we have a particular person, so information behind a particular tree. The tree has many branches. You can have more than 20 branches, and a particular tree that only has 2 branches. Like they are more of like unstructured data because it does not matter. They should have the same characteristics, but we can actually tag them together. And we know that structured data. We move from that to the data store. Now we are moving to the data processing perspective. Data processing is actually conversion of raw data to meaningful information through a process. The data one is actually like a oil refinery. It's a very good one example. It's like an oil refinery. So we're actually moving to the data store. So, and when it comes to the processing part, we have 2 particular processing pipelines. We have the batch job and the stream job, or you can call it the batch processing and the stream processing. Data elements collected into group, the whole group is then processed at a future time. It's actually a batch processing. When you have a system like a point of sale system that gather the data, do the job, dump it somewhere in the database, it's actually a batch process. When you have a processing type like a critical analysis, as an event is going on, you are actually updating your analytics, you are updating your processing, telling you that a particular person just tweeted and it appears on the dashboard like a real-time stream. They're doing a streaming job. So immediately the system is uploaded, give us an output. There is no a flipping or a staging layer. Let's just put it like that. It's actually a streaming job. So the two key processing at this level is we have a batch processing and a stream processing layer. So in a batch processing, all data in the data set are being processed. All the batch processing consists of data in the data set being processed at a particular time. Now, it can be rolling when it comes to more advanced data engineering. We have rolling time window, a lot of windows, streaming window. When it comes to even Azure Streaming Analytics, we have a lot of windows that we can use to bring in those data. The data size also, these are more of the things that actually differentiate them is how we come to data scope, the scope of the data. First thing is process all the data at once. But when it comes to streaming, you are not processing the data at once. You are not waiting for the next data to come in. Immediately, a single item of data comes in, is being processed. So that's one. When it comes to size, the size of a streaming data can actually be smaller. It can be a few records, while that of the batch data set can be a large data load. Performance, latency can actually affect batch processing. But when it comes to streaming data, it's a millisecond process. The process will need a millisecond process. So these are things, the analysis, you can run complex analytics in a batch job, but it's actually difficult at this stage to run some for example, you trying to run a compound interest analysis on a stream job as it's coming in is actually a very heavy workload. So, based on the differences between them, you can actually put them down. Data scope, what we mean by data scope is actually the number we can process at a particular time. For batch, we can actually process a large from things small. Another thing on data size, performance, and other things like that. So I think we have actually made a good justice that. Another thing that if you have any question at this point, you can actually drop it before I move on. And if I'm too fast or slow, you can actually bring me back. Okay, can I proceed?
For me, you are doing great. You're not too fast for me.
Okay. Okay, so let me just proceed. So because we are actually coming. Okay. So I will move on roles in data. It's actually optional, but I remember when I was writing my own exam last year, it actually comes out. So I think it's something you need to be aware of. Roles data, database administrators, data engineer, and data analyst. A lot of people believe data analyst do everything. A lot of people believe data engineer maybe they can do everything. And a lot of
We lost you.
Oh, my feedback.
No, maybe from your end. We can hear him.
Okay,
Oh,
okay,
nice.
okay,
I
okay.
can
Go
hear
on,
him.
go on, go on, go on, go on.
Okay, so we are assuming non-technical and technical experts. So, but you actually need to know who are actually in the business of the day of data, especially when it comes to an enterprise organization. So we have the database administrator, which actually there are three key roles. There are also other roles that you might actually think of when we try to break them down. But any other roles actually under these three roles. We have the database administrators, the data engineer, and the data analyst. So you can actually understand the three aspects depending on years of experience. Years of experience actually make us to migrate from one form to the other. I started as a data analyst, then I'm moving up to data engineer. Little bit of data administrator just for me to query my data, do some schema, informative schema and stuff. But actually, experience can actually take us up. But I will start from the right. The data analyst actually provides a lot of questions goes around this. Who is the data analyst? Is actually someone at the end of the data value chain. And when we talk about at the end of the data value chain, it actually drags a lot of things down. Provide insight into data, visual reporting, modeling data for analysis, combining data for visualization analysis, actually the role of the data analyst. It's not only Microsoft. We are talking about data as a whole. These are actually role of the data analyst. The data analyst can now be divided into, can now be talking to a report author, data modeler, business, or ad hoc report owners, power users. You can now leverage with a lot of them, but actually those roles I've mentioned actually under the data analyst. So they're actually behind the scenes to get insight into the data. Now, we move forward to the major part, which is the data engineer. And in many standard organizations, there is the requirement of the data engineer, which prepares a lot of pipelines and processing. Injection storage, these are people that interface with the data coming in and trying to do some engineering processing behind it. And especially prepare, that is why I actually need to bring this back here. They prepare the data for the OLAP processing method, the OLAP processing layer, sorry. They prepare the data for the OLAP processing. We have known that the analyst cannot relate to the OLCP layer. The data store, we have two data store in this perspective, the OLCP and the OLAP layer. The data analysis, which is started from, cannot interact with the OLCP. We are talking about an standard enterprise now. Then, the engineer prepares the OLAP for the data analysis to make use of it. So, the engineers deals with the pipeline, the processing, the injection, the cleaning of the data, the streaming data, what we need to do about them, the volume, how is the volume going to affect our processing, how the various data source, data warehouse, everything are in charge of the data engineer. So we can have ELCP expert here, we can have data warehouse expert here, we can have some people that actually knows about big data, PySpark, a lot of things here under here. You can have, depending on the processing you use in your organization, massive processing, whatever processing layer, whatever things the data engineer wants to use, it's actually left with them and the organization. So they actually prepare, what you should remember is they prepare the data for the analysis. It's very, very important for us to remember this part of it. They prepare the data for the analysis. The analytics provide insights into the data, model the data for analysis. Now, the administrators, these are people that are actually behind the scene that most of us didn't actually know. They deal with the database management, implement security, and a lot of things. Though the engineers work in form of that, but the database administrator actually based on database management, giving roles and security, trying to check what a database, how is it performing. So the two things about them is data engineer can do more when it regards to unstructured and semi-structured data. But the database administrator can actually be more of a structured data, which is something that we have in a lot of organizations trying to look into the database, how are they performing. So these are also part of the processing of the workload, the roles which are actually data analysis. So participants trying to prepare for this exam should be aware of these three roles. And we also advise to take through the Microsoft Learn. Also, the DP900 Microsoft Learn. I can bet if you will pass through the DP900, it's actually a good way for you, and you actually make a flying colors of 900 over 1000 at the end of the day. So, common tools for data analysis, I think we actually used to be. So, I think our time is fast spent. We want to dive in because of other participants, trainer that will come at the end of the day. So, but I'll actually bring in some questions that we can talk about. Though there's a lot of things we can see talk on, but I want us to collaborate, and I'll bring a lot of questions that I have here. Let me try to bring into my next screen. Sorry.
For now, I do. Okay.
Yeah. Sorry. Okay, let me use read. So if we can't cover a lot, we actually use this question perspective. Can you see my Word document now?
Yes, I can.
Okay. So I just want us to engage in some questions that we can use to explain more terminology at the end of the day. The first question here is, in the context of relational data, I've not actually talked more of relational data, but these are things I can use questions like this to treat more. Which of the following statements best describe the process of data normalization? Now, the first thing is to ask me that I've never talked about data normalization. So I think this question will actually take me back to a little bit of data normalization and explain. Okay? Sorry, a little. Okay? I want to go through a question perspective, but the first question I have here is actually beyond the scope of what I've actually taught today. So I'm trying to bring it down. Hold on a little bit.
The question that is within the context of this class, that also help you.
I can hear you.
I said if you skip to questions that relate to today's class, that would also help us. So we spend them fast.
Actually, yes. I didn't want to get more teaching than I want to bring on some other questions. So we have a pity that the first question I put there. Okay. I think I have some. Yes. I know I have some other question at the end of it. Okay. I will share my screen now. Up. Up. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
I mean, is my screen up, please? Trying to see which one am I sharing? Okay. So let's just take it here. Can you see my screen now?
Yes, we can.
So, okay, so we are going to go through just these database use cases. Then we are going to look into it one by one, and I will entertain any other questions. I didn't want to take it to an higher level beyond this day. I want it to be a bit by bit process, so that by the time other speakers are coming in, to take it a little and participants will not be overwhelmed for any class. So now, identifying what we want to do here is trying to identify relational databases. We all know about an IoT device. IoT device can be anything. For example, in my organization, I have some things. A lot of organizations have things that we use to capture our resumption, like a fingerprint. Immediately you put your hand in, the door open. Those are IoT. So now, although typically considered for non-relational, data from IoT could be structured and consistent. Now, so these are things that it also goes around trying to bring down what type of data. You can't just say data from IoT device is unstructured. So you need to actually define, that's where I'm trying to go. You need to actually define what kind of data comes in. Imagine a particular device like the fingerprint resumption one, which we use. Once I put my fingerprint, it captures my resumption date. Actually, for my fingerprint index, it actually recognizes my name. What is actually done at the end of the day is it's process, there's the processing behind the thing that identify Toby logged in so time, 8:15 a.m. and it puts it in a schema. This is a structure and a consistent data. Now, online transactional, so not all the time you can actually just say data from this actually what they call it is actually structure and not structure. You just have to define your use cases, which is actually important. So you can have questions around a particular business case is trying to say this is a IoT device, this and that and that. And I think it's actually going to be helpful in that scenario. So I think that for my question number 2, I have something like that for me. Let's see. Yes. So which of the roles I have questions? I think I need. Okay. I want us to take question. Okay. So I think we have one question here. Which of the activities listed below is the responsibility of the Azure database? And these are typical questions from Microsoft that can come out in the exam. Now, first option is allocating system, storage, planning, storage and recruitment for database systems, controlling and monitoring user access to the database, and very compliance with the database vendor.
Hello, Mr. Toby. Hello, I can hear you, sir. Somebody is raising our hand up.
Oh, thanks a lot.
Dr. Bola, you can ask your question. Hello, doctor.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone.
Yeah, good afternoon. Good afternoon.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Toby. Thank you so much for this session. A lot of, I won't say a lot of new informations, and I don't want to say I'm confused, but I just need some clarifications. I discovered that with the few months or years I've been on this data analysis stuff, I've discovered that quite a number of terminologies, they seem confusing, but in the long run, they tend to mean, I tend to be corrected, they tend to mean same thing. For instance, I've come across, at least from your slides so far, I've come across data pipeline, I've come across data pathway, and I've seen something, probably not in your, this one not in your slide, but data flow.
Okay.
Do these three mean the same thing? For clarity's sake.
Oh,
then
nice.
number 2 question. Then let me just complete my question for you answer. And number 2, you made mention of DP 900. I was not sure of what it was, so I quickly went to Google to ask. It was talking about Azure Data Fundamentals. So when I saw Azure, I was like, okay, I think Azure has to do with something related to cloud. So is there, I don't know, I seem confused. Is there something similar? Is it something similar to what you are taking us? Because if it's Azure, I'll be expecting that probably you start talking about something that has to do with cloud, whatever. I don't know. So I don't know. How can you just explain to me? I've been seeing data Azure fundamentals, and I don't know what it really means. But is it totally different from this data analytics or Power BI, so to speak, that I have really, understood and probably taken the exam? Is it that different, or is another entity entirely? I know that in a way, quite a number of them are interwoven, but is there a thin line or similarity somewhere, or wide differences somewhere? I just need clarity.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I think that's a very nice question from, let's say, from the non-technical perspective. And these are things that we actually we also treat and then make sure beginners understand the differences between this and that. So I will take it up from what you have said. So the first thing is the data flow or the data flow. Hope you can see my screen.
Yes,
Not yet up.
Oh, I'm not sharing my screen. Okay.
Maybe it's only me. Can anybody see? I can only see
Well,
Mr. Kazim's face.
No, the screen is not up.
Okay.
Okay, it's up now.
So my screen is up now.
It's coming up now.
Talk about data flow. All right.
I can see data flow.
Yeah. So I'm trying to bring out what you mentioned, and these are part of Unity data pipeline. Talk about data factory, and I talk about the Power BI and what the discussion Power BI and the data fundamental. Am I right, Dr. Bola? So I want to treat that.
Yes, you're right. You're right.
So let me take it one by one. Now,
I think Azure was fundamental, or is it data fundamental?
okay,
Azure fundamentals.
Let's take it one by one. A data flow, when it comes to terminology, as I said, there's some terminology that are technical, there's some terminology that the business is actually understandable for the business. So when we talk about data flow, a data flow in the perspective of Power BI is actually a mini data warehouse where you can actually aggregate your data, I make use of the OLAP. I will make use of data flow as my OLAP in a lot of Power BI deployment. The data flow is where you aggregate your data. In this course of the training, I've mentioned about OLTP and OLAP. Am I right, Dr. Bola? Please, you have grabbed.
Yes.
So that OLAP, this data flow in the language of Power BI can serve as the OLAP. So a data flow is a mini data warehouse that brings in data from various sorts of data sources. So that less data flow. Hope that is clear.
Yes.
So at least you can actually know we mentioned two things here, two systems of data store, OLTP and OLAP. So this data flow you mentioned about is actually like an OLAP that we use in a lot of our deployments. So the next one is data pipeline. When you talk about data pipeline, it's actually something that you have been the data is wherever I've done it. I know you have interacted with Power Query. Am I right?
Yes, very correct.
Whatever you're doing in Power Query, these are terminology that I think maybe different training we go, there is a lot of confusion or maybe a knowledge gap or explanation. So whatever you have been doing in the data query or Power Query, I beg your pardon, Power Query, you started with remove column. It can be considered as a data pipeline because it started with an injection of data, maybe from an Azure, and it ends with an injection of a prepared data. So a data pipeline is something that receives a data and gives you something, a processed data. So the input is a data. When we talk about data in this word, is something that is raw, a raw data, and give you a processed one, a processed data. So whatever you are doing in Power Query, bringing it down to what you are used to is a data pipeline. Is that correct now?
Okay. Okay.
Exactly. It's a data pipeline. So you're actually building a pipeline, but you might not know you're building a pipeline because whatever Power Query is doing is being a recording of what you are preparing behind the scenes. So the same way too, more of a data package. So a data pipeline is not, a data flow is not restricted to Power BI alone. It's in all data systems. These are standard terminology. Data pipeline, when it comes to Azure Data Factory, is another thing entirely. But they are still, the main definition of all these things are what in a layman language I'm trying to bring out there. The data pipeline can actually be some means of where your data pass through. It might not be a pipeline. Like when we talk about pipeline, there will be some processing going through. But a data pipeline can be, I have a client which I'm consulting currently for, is a global client, having some branch in East Africa, West Africa, and the major people I'm interfacing here is those with West Africa. But their data is actually going to some data store in Egypt, which is North Africa. So we can actually make this as a data pipeline because I think where the confusion is coming is when we come to an enterprise level, it's beyond the self-service BI. So I think the main bone of confusion is you started as a self-service or maybe connected to an but when we go to an enterprise level, a top level, we meet all this technology. But at the end of the day, the most important thing is that we try to define all this terminology down to layman language. So data pathway can be those parts, the data pass through. It can pass through Lagos branch or whatever it is, pass through maybe someone needs to accept authentication and things like that. It might not be a processing layer. Do you understand? It might just be a breaking down layer or something like that. So I hope that is clear.
Okay, it's better.
Thank
you. I know with time I will get used to it.
With time, you're actually going to get it. Just follow the series. With time, you're actually getting to it because what actually happening is most of us, which is why this series is being was created for most of data enthusiasts and data practitioners in Africa. You are only aimed at the self-service layer, but the self-service layer and the enterprise layer are actually two different ball games. The next one I will try to round up, which might have actually exhausted my time. Even if we say we started 10 to 12 15, I have about 4 minutes left. The Power BI and Azure Data Fundamentals. Power BI is actually a data analytics tool, and we have been engaging with Power BI. There is a lot behind the scenes with Power BI. When it comes to real things going behind the scene, whatever you are doing on your Power BI desktop, there's a lot going behind the scenes. And most of the lot going behind the scenes is what you are trying to break down. For example, I will bring up this Power BI and data fundamental together. I will use this means to explain what happens behind the scene when you are. Have you ever published a Power BI report to the cloud?
No.
Okay.
Just once. Using the gateway, maybe just once.
Okay, using the gateway. Yes.
Yeah.
If you are using the gateway, you are dealing with what we are actually talking about here today. But it's not actually open to you in your language. Now, what happens behind the scene is that when you are doing those kind of things, Microsoft has a data center, and Microsoft has what we call data center at various regions. There's a place we check where your Power BI is connecting to. It might be connecting to, my own organization is connecting to North Ireland, some are connecting to Netherlands, some are connecting to South. All these things we are talking about, OLAP and OLTP, Microsoft have done all these processing behind the scenes for you. So that is why you just get it on the end side, but there's a lot of things going behind it. When you publish your data, your Power BI report, you click publish. Microsoft move your data when you are using what they call it, direct mode. Is it direct mode? I think direct mode. Direct query, direct query, and data load. The name just my mind now. When you publish your report, you have a migration of your data to one of these data centers, and it came from OLTP to OLAP, and a lot of processes were going behind the scenes, and it saves your data. So Power BI is actually a data analytics tool. Azure Data Fundamental is giving you everything about data in Azure platform. So what we'll be mentioning here is beyond Power BI. Power BI is inclusive, but it's beyond Power BI. It's talking about all other data, all other data terminology. And at this level, that's why the coordinator actually brings it down to fundamental. We are starting with fundamental, and in the course of subsequent training, you start knowing more. I will drop the link to DP900. You can just read about it. Everybody can read about it. It does not require any lab. If you start with this, I'm very sure you're going to enjoy the data journey a lot. You're going to understand a lot at the end of the day. So you understanding Power BI is a thumb up, and then you knowing everything. It's like, let me use this last example. It's like you have a car. Your paramedic can work on the car. The person doing injection is working on the car. What do they call it? The mechanic, the one that is dealing with the engine, is working on the car. The upholstery, the one that's dealing with the furniture, is working on the car. But all of them are also working on what in the car. So that is it. So we have a lot of things working together. So I think I will drop the question at this point. I really like this question, and it's actually shows that you are interested in the business of the day. Dr. Bola, I'm happy for this question. And I'm very sure you'll join the rest of the session. Subsequent trainers and subsequent speakers will actually walk us through. And at the end of the day, I want to hear your flying color that you actually clear Azure Data Fundamental exam. At the end of the day, the flying colors, and you can explain everything on under Azure Data Platform. Thank you for the question. Thank you, everyone. We have actually spent a lot of time, but I know there was actually knowledge transfer, and there was a lot of opening and enlightenment to a lot of topics. Thank you. Can you all and stop?
Hello, Toby. Hello, Mr. Toby. I'm seeing Mr. Sheyi's hand up. Mr. Sheyoluwa Wumiju.
Okay, Mr. Sheyi, you can go.
Yes. I just want to answer also collaborate what Toby said to answer the madam that asked the question. Now, in terms of certification and exams, now this is not really about the practical or the of what Toby is saying. Microsoft divided their certification into 3 different core track. The first one is the fundamental. Now, the fundamental got across Azure, data, AI, even there is I think Power BI too is coming, security is already there. So what the essence of doing that is to onboard people into IT, even when you don't have experience. You want to know what is the basic of data, you want to understand what Toby is saying, then they go through those tracks and you write an exam. However, that exam is not really a badge that Microsoft consider as a track for your professional stand or status. Now, after that, you now go to the second level, which is the associate. Now, the associate, they believe that after you have done the fundamental, you should be able to work 1 to 2 years and you have experience, and that experience take you to the next stage of the exam. You do the associate. Then after you have got the associate, then you have experience. After 2 years, you have done the certification to show. You now go to the last stage, which is the expert stage. You find out that most of data has its own expert stage. AI, they are coming up with the expert stage. Azure, for example, have expert stage across several channel in terms of if you are a DevOps person, if you are administrator, if you are a architect, you can be an expert. Then they have another one which is called specialist. Now, specialists are certain track that they look at. For example, Azure, SAP on Azure is special. So when you have an expert certification, you can go for that and say, I'm a specialist in this. So all these role-based certification, they are rolling it out gradually. A lot is coming. Now, security has come up with its own roadmap now. We have the fundamental for security. You have the associate for security, which got across identity, all the security features that you have there, you can be certified on it. So just to collaborate what Toby said, apart from the technical knowledge, also in terms of certification, they brought this thing out in order for you to know fundamental is onboarding. They don't really consider fundamental certification as a certification that they can bide you as a status for that particular track. What they just want is an eye opener for you to have access to what that technology look like. Then the most important thing is the associate and also the experts. I just say I should add that to what to be said. Thank you.
I think that's actually clear. Mr. Shi actually came from the angle I omitted, and I think I cleared, and I really appreciate that.
Thank you. Sorry for barging into the class.
No, it's actually
Thank you.
You make it very well.
Thank you, Mr. Sheyi. It's that your contribution is very to me. It's a serious value adding contribution. Thank you.
Very. Yeah.
You have the floor, sir.
Okay, so I think I'll round up for the day. The most important thing in any training I try to is not about the number of things, it's the value addition and the enlightenment. And I can see the contribution from a lot of us, from Mr. Sheyi, from myself, from other people I know. We are more better than yesterday, or even let me say more better than an hour ago. We understand some data fundamental. We love to join next session. Looking forward to that. So I think that's all from my side. Thank you very much. Thank you for joining. Thank you for the time. Thank you for the question. We actually appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Kasi. Thank you, Toby Kasi.
So thank you, Mr. Toby. Thank you, Mr. Toby. We really appreciate this session. I want to tell you that to an extent, I'm a changed man now, better than before. Dr. Bola is just faster than me. I don't think there is anybody that is as confused as me because of different terms. You read this, it led you to this. You read this, it led you to this. So you don't even know which way to follow. But at least to an extent, at least we are beginning to connect the dots. Thank you, Mr. Sheyi.
Yes.
Your contribution to is very, very meaningful. To an extent, at least, there are insights now. So for me, I want to appeal, if it is possible. I don't know if you can, consider us for this. We saw your slides, and there are some things we saw that are very, very critical. I don't know if there is a way you can release it so that, sometimes when you receive lecture like this and you left it, you can even go out again. But if you have the slide, you can still, go back and still do your due diligence, so that at least it will help what you have learned stick. It's just an appeal if it is possible, so that it will help all of us. So thank you so much, everyone. Okay. You want to say something?
On the slide and then I'll work on the slide and then send to the group, and particularly will get that as soon as possible.
Okay. Thank you so much. That will be very fine. So this journey continue, as we have all heard from our facilitator. This data is a journey. It's not a destination. So next week we have another session. So let us try and be on ground on time. I can tell you, if you come early, you know that the time invested here is not a wasted time at all, and you never regret it. Thank you so much, everyone. I really appreciate you. So we have come to the end of today's meetup. So see you all next week, same time. Thank you so much, and God bless.